What's up, guys? It's Nero. Welcome to Chapter 2, Structural Change. Now, it's important that you actually begin to embody frequency first, action after. And there's a particular way that we go about making sure that is. Frequency first is something that, breaks down into all planes. On the physical plane, you have to make sure you're embodying it. On the mental plane, you have to make sure you're embodying it. And on the spiritual plane, you have to make sure that you're embodying it. Because once you get that synchronization across all three planes, that's when everything changes. So currently in your particular business, your life might be in a particular way. And we're going to get into this. So here's what we're going to cover today. The pathway to the awakened entrepreneur. We're also going to cover the mistake that's ruining your creation. And we're also going to get into the routine that your life has always needed. Like I said, frequency first, action after is the pathway to the awakened entrepreneur. Now, I really do mean this. And like I said to you, this is going to be a reoccurring theme because this one framework is all that you need. I kid you not. This is a principle, right? And this is something that, it took me over 8 years and 350 books to be able to conceptualize this in the way that I have. So it's important that you don't spend 8 years and reading 350 books because you don't have to, right? I mean, you can, but I'm assuming you have less free time on your hands than I did. So it's very much important that you understand that this is the pathway to being an awakened entrepreneur. Frequency first is the pathway to having enough money for you to take a trip with your family and not feeling like you're in a 9 to 5 in your business, not having to worry about where the next pay is going to come in from, not having to worry about these minor details, changing your strategy and frequency, not being in a state of worry and anxiety, imposter syndrome, mental chaos. It's very much important that we divert the path that we're taking, because whether you realize this or not, we're always taking a particular path. Some people just don't realize they're on a path. So with that being said, let's go. Now, I like to start off by saying this. The world would never take a day off from programming you, so neither should you. And this is something that hit me once when I was writing an email for my newsletter. It hit me and I was like, apparently we see 4,000 ads a day, whether that's in, and that doesn't mean you see 4,000 ads on your phone, but it means that when you see a label, a Starbucks cup, a Nike tick, a iPhone sign, we see so many symbols every day, and without realizing, marketers, release a statistic that we're marketed to, we see over 4,000 ads a day, and that's just ads, right, of companies that want to get in your head to take up mental real estate so you can want them. Think about all the limitation, the scarcity, the failure, the impossibilities that you're constantly being thrown your way without you even realizing. And it happens all the time. And if that's the case, if the world will never take it down from programming you, then neither should you. And it's important that, like the central theme of this week is, you begin prioritizing your frequency instead of what the world wants you to do. Now, you need to put on your armor before going into battle. Now, you're probably like, what's this guy talking about? What's this battle? What's this armor? What are you talking about, Nero? Well, in your business, as time's gone on, the busier that you've become, and, we kind of wear being busy as some achievement band, as entrepreneurs, as an achievement badge, as a trophy, without realizing that we become so consumed by our business that you wake up, you think business, I got to get to business. You go to bed, business. Throughout the day when you're eating, business. Oh, I can't do this because I got to work. I got to do this, which there's nothing wrong about, right? But where it starts to become dangerous is we make the mistake of being so overly consumed by our business as a priority instead of what we want to project onto the universe, that we accept what our business is imposing onto us. And what is business? Business is solving a problem. And because you're solving a problem, you're always going to be thrown problems. And because you're always going to be thrown problems, those problems can begin to affect the frequency that you put out to the universe, which then becomes embedded and almost branded onto your frequency. And this is what happens. You wake up, you go straight immediately to business, something's gone wrong. Instantly, your frequency has been affected by the potentiality of something going wrong. This person hasn't paid. Before you've even given yourself a chance to program yourself, you've allowed your business, which remember is problems, to program you. Now, I know this is definitely resonating because, there's not a single entrepreneur that I've met that hasn't got to a point where they become so consumed by their business that it's the first thing that they do, which is terrible, because if that's the first thing you do, then it's doing your frequency, and not in the good way. You must begin to cultivate and prioritize yourself instead of the business. Now, I'd like to ask you a question. Let's do a little thought experiment. Now, this isn't, an action item. This is just a thought experiment that's just popped up in the moment. I want you to pause this and write down who's the most important person in your life. Write that down. Pause and write it down. Now, I want you to look at that answer. All right, I hope you wrote it down. If you actually haven't wrote it down, then seriously, pause this and write down who's the most important person in your reality, in your life. Assuming you've done that now, if the answer is not myself or you, then cross that out. Because here's the thing, you are the most important person in your reality. I don't care if you got kids. I don't care if you got a mother. I don't care if you got a partner. You are the most important person in your reality, because without you, there is you don't have a reality without you. And unfortunately, the universe doesn't feel the frequency of those around you and then creates their frequency off of you. It creates your frequency. So if you're beginning to prioritize your business instead of yourself, and the world instead of yourself, then you're allowing for the frequency of those things externally to you to cultivate your frequency internally. But you are the most important person in your reality, because everything that you can experience in reality stems from you. So if it's not you, then you're playing the game backwards. Now, the way that we do this is by a metaphysical morning, which is a combination of reading, meditation, and visualizing. Now, what book you read doesn't matter. If you want, you can ask me for a book recommendation and I'll give you some. Just to name some off the top of my head right now: Parallel Universes of Self by Frederick Dodson, Three Magic Words by U.L.S. Anderson, The Science of Being by Eugene Fersen. What else? Quantum Minds, and James Allen, anything by James Allen, but As a Man Thinketh, Power of Destiny, Man, Circumstance, and Body. And these are just things that are just off the top of my head, right? Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, Working with the Law, Raymond Hollywell, The Game of Life by Florence Sheen, anything by Neville Goddard, anything by Joseph Murphy. Now, the next part is the meditation. Now, this metaphysical morning has to be the foundation of everything you do. Before you go to a meeting, before you talk to anybody in your business, before you worry about anything in your business, we are putting the armor on before going into battle. You are prioritizing your frequency so that when you step out into the world, even if something did want to go wrong, it feels your frequency first and then alters itself, because that's the type of stuff that happens. Your frequency speaks for you before you've even spoken. And this is to your business, this is to people, this is to everyone. So it's important that you begin to hone in on the metaphysical morning. And before you do anything in your business, you've read, whether it's 5-10 pages, I always say an hour. As an entrepreneur, there's no reason as to why you can't schedule a routine that prioritizes you. I don't care if you're going to work later. I don't care if you wake up earlier. You get this done. Now, what we've covered today is your pathway to being an awakened entrepreneur, the mistake that's ruining your creation, which is prioritizing the frequency of everything else except you, and the routine that your reality has always needed. Now, we're going to get into some action items next on the specifics, but with that being said, I'll see you in the next one.